In medieval France, wedding guests would follow the newlyweds into their bedroom to watch them consummate the marriage. The next morning, the bloodied bed sheets would be hung from the castle window for everyone to see as proof. This wasn't romance, it was public humiliation. I'm going to share 5 medieval wedding night rituals that were very scary and make modern horror movies seem like fairy tales. These traditions will make you glad you weren't born 800 years ago. Here are the 5 medieval wedding night traditions that were very painful. The church made wedding nights very unpleasant. Coming in at number 5, there was a kind of pain that started before the couple even got close: the strict rules of the church. The medieval church had a complicated view of sex. While sex was necessary for having children, the act itself was viewed with deep suspicion and seen as sinful and impure. The church put many rules in place about when a married couple could be together. They were not allowed to have sex on Sundays, and often on Wednesdays and Fridays too. It was also banned during big holy seasons like Lent and Advent, and on many days to honor saints. On top of that, the rules said they couldn't have sex when a woman was pregnant, during her period, or while she was breastfeeding. This left a lot of the year when intimacy was not allowed in the eyes of God. But the rules didn't stop there. The church also had ideas about how to do it. They thought one way, the missionary position, was the right way. It was seen as the most natural way to have a baby and the least likely to cause temptation. Any other position was seen as a sinful indulgence. Some even believed that straying from the right way could result in a deformed child. This made people always worried about their spiritual health. The wedding night wasn't a celebration of love. It was a test to see how good you were. People were filled with guilt and the fear of being punished for making a single mistake. The bride before puberty. At number 4, we look at a serious personal problem: child marriage. In important families, daughters were valuable because they could be promised in marriage when they were babies. They would get officially married when they turned 12, which was the minimum age allowed by the church. These alliances were not unusual. They were actually a key part of medieval politics. Promises made when the girl was a baby often involved negotiations between kings and nobles, with the girl never being asked what she thought. Imagine being a child who was just starting to become a teenager. Someone tells you that you are now married to a stranger who is much older than you. Isabella of Valois was 6 years old when she was married to King Richard II of England, who was 29 years old. Margaret Beaufort, the mother of Henry VII, got married at 12 and had a child at 13. Being given such big responsibilities at a young age hurt her health in the long run. Sometimes, the full responsibilities were delayed until a girl seemed older and more mature. But that didn't always guarantee protection. The need to make important agreements and secure heirs fell to someone who had no say in what was happening. The marriage meant the end of being in control of her own life. Their lives were decided for them, and their futures were traded for political gain. Childhood was taken over by politics, and they were seen as tools for making alliances. The harm went beyond just the wedding day. Being forced into these roles created lasting problems for their minds and bodies. The idea that they had no choice was seen as necessary for the state, making it hard for them to resist. These young women carried titles and obligations that were decided by others, living under the weight of decisions made for them. Dynasties were built on taking away their freedom. The bedding ceremony. If child marriage was a private horror, our tradition at number 3 was a very, very public one. The bedding ceremony was what it was called. In those days before marriage certificates, the only way to know for sure if a couple's kids would be considered their own was to have sex. It made things clear, so everyone in the community felt like they had a right to be there. So, after the wedding party was over, things would get crazy. Instead of the couple sneaking off, they'd be surrounded by their friends and family. There would be loud music and jokes, and the whole group would march the bride and groom to the bedroom. Their friends might even take their clothes off and put them in bed. A priest would bless the bed, and the couple would get one last drink before the curtains closed. But the party didn't always stop there. In some cases, especially among the nobility, guests would wait outside the door, listening to see if the marriage was taking place. This tradition, which might seem really intrusive to us, showed that in their world, marriage wasn't just about two people. It was a community event. The fact that there was no privacy and the pressure to perform such a personal act in front of others was a kind of severe public embarrassment. If you're finding this look into history's darker side interesting, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us find more of these strange and forgotten stories. Now, back to the harsher side of things. Coming in at number 2 is the direct and often very rough follow-up to the bedding ceremony. The demand for proof, specifically, proof of virginity, which was verified by showing the bloodied wedding sheets. In medieval society, a bride's virginity was her family's honor. More importantly, it was seen as the only way to be sure of having a child. This obsession led to a very sad and embarrassing tradition. After the couple had sex, the bed sheets would be looked at by family members. If they had blood on them, it was seen as proof that the bride was still a virgin. These sheets were sometimes even shown to the wedding guests the next morning. A proud but also very invasive announcement. But what if there was no blood? Back then, people didn't know much about the body. They thought that every girl would bleed the first time she had sex, but that's not true. If the sheets stayed clean, the consequences for the bride could be very bad. She could be shamed in public, accused of cheating, sent back to her family in shame, or even face violence. This pressure led to some very desperate measures. Brides might try to cheat the system by using animal blood in a small bottle or by cutting themselves to stain the sheets and avoid trouble. This tradition made the wedding night a very scary time when a woman's whole future and maybe even her life depended on one tiny, unreliable sign. The wedding night tradition that frightened people in medieval Europe, and now we're talking about the most famous and terrifying wedding night tradition of all. The one that has haunted European stories for centuries and is a symbol of how cruel people were back then. 1. At the top of the list, we have the Droit du seigneur, or the right of the Lord, also known as jus primi noctis, the right of the first night. This was the supposed rule that let a feudal lord sleep with his vassal's new bride on her wedding night. The story paints a very scary picture. A newly married young couple is forced to send the bride to the local lord's castle, where he would take her before her own husband could. It shows the extreme abuse of power and the complete control men had over women. But here's where things get confusing. Despite its strong hold on our imagination, most modern historians agree that there's no evidence that droit du seigneur actually existed as a legal right. There's no proof it was a widely enforced law in medieval Europe. The references we have are mostly indirect or appear in literature written long after the Middle Ages, often to make the era seem more brutal. One of the only legal documents that mentions it is from 1486, and it lists it as a bad custom that was being formally stopped. So if it wasn't real, why is it number 1 on our list? Because its power was in the massive fear it caused. Even if it wasn't the law, the fear it represented was very real. Feudal lords had enormous power over their subjects, and sexual assault was certainly a part of that reality. The right of the Lord became a legend that perfectly captured the fear and powerlessness of the peasant class. The pain of this tradition wasn't that it was happening all the time, but that it could happen. It was the threat, the symbol of a system where a common person, especially a woman, had almost no rights at all. The worst things are the ones that live inside our heads. When you look closely at history, the medieval wedding night doesn't look like the romantic evening we imagine. It was a show of power, a public performance, and a clear picture of a world that was harsh and unforgiving. These traditions show us that behind the castle walls and beautiful windows, the most private moments of life were controlled by strict and often cruel rules. So the next time you're worried about modern wedding planning, just remember, it could have been much worse. What do you think was the most cruel tradition of them all? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to learn more about the darker side of history, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification button. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe for more historical nightmares from the past.